I answered, but you didn't answer why it went from 1.5 to 0.3.
It went from 0.15 to 0.3 because we are one body out of many that have to make this decision for this to pass. And Councilman Bond, that's true. If we pass this tonight, it does not necessarily go into effect. The tax council, the majority of the tax council, would have to approve this. So when you have a situation like that, and you start to speak with the others that would have to vote to approve this, and they show no interest at the 0.15, that led to adjusting it to 0.3 to try to get other members of the tax council on board. So that's where we are.
Was this 0.3 though on the ordinance that we tabled last?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so then how did it get? What you just said, Ben, that we're doing the repeat of the Pendleton, which I'm uncertain whether that was a valid, whether notice was properly given on that particular vote. Some of our the tax council wasn't notified in proper time range, so I think there's a question
Ted,
whether that was true.
Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So the public hearing to the public was advertised at 4:30, well in advance of the last meeting. Knowing that the tax council also had to be advised of the public hearing, 10 days advance notice was given to the tax council prior to today's hearing as well.
Ed, I'm sorry.
Yeah, do you mind using the microphone?
We got people indicating they can't hear. Would you mind going to the mic?
All right, so the actual public hearing was held on September 14th. Requisite notice was given to the publications and the public well in advance of 10 days, which is statutorily required. We got notice that the tax council needed also 10 days notice. That wasn't given before the last meeting, so we gave it 10 days before today's hearing, allowing the tax council to have an opportunity to come voice their concerns at today's meeting. So everyone was given more than a requisite opportunity in advance notice to give their opinion.
What was the notice that they gave? Was it in writing?
Absolutely.
To each taxing?
Yes.
Yeah, every council has to do that, right, Ted? Every council has to give the tax members all in the county, the way I understand the notice.
Yeah, you give them 10 days advance notice.
Right.
Give them
So
an
what you're
opportunity.
saying is Pendleton did, in fact, give 10
I can't speak
days
to Pendleton.
every
I am
taxing
not Pendleton's counsel. I have no idea what happened at Pendleton.
All right, well, that's what I'm asking.
Well,
did
I don't know.
Pendleton give 10 days notice?
Well, you could.
Why don't you ask Pendleton's counsel?
According to the memo, Pendleton has to revote. I got confirmed on that today by another attorney. They have to revote.
Was that Pendleton's attorney?
No, but pretty
Okay.
close.
So then I would suggest we wait on Pendleton's attorney to
Actually, yes,
work with
actually it
them to
was. They
decide-
sent a memo out
to
to
decide
two
what
other
that is,
councils.
but Anyway, our duty here is not to decide what needs to happen in Pendleton. Our duty here is to decide what happens here for the Madison County Council. I would suggest this is a very difficult issue. I have concerns in a lot of areas. I do believe that it's imperative that we begin building a jail. There are two ordinances that we will have to approve in order for us to have the funding in place to build the jail. We could decide to only pass one tonight. That would give some money, seed money, next year to get started. But then that doesn't change the fact that we still would not have the funding in place to build the jail. So we would then have to come back next year and go through this same discussion. I believe that with Jack, with our bond counsel, things have been developed in a way where we have people that know what they're doing, that have prepared a process for us to go about doing this well. I get concerned. In my business, we are sometimes part of large building projects. building projects, typically, there's always the push for it to exceed the budget. What we would be doing, in a sense, is setting that budget. If we pass both of these, for example, both ordinances, then we will have said the Madison County Council has set the budget for the jail at this number. And then it's up to us to make sure we stay consistent with that and that we enforce that so that the project doesn't spiral out of control and go into a lot of cost overruns. That's just part of building a large building. Building a commercial building, it's very different than building a residential building. And so, there's ways to keep them on track. I fear that if we pass one ordinance but not the other, we'll then be collecting taxes from the public, from our taxpayers, without the ability to actually build the jail. And then if we come back and fail to pass the second one next year or whenever, we'll have our hands on a lot of the taxpayers' money. We'll have spent a lot of money on architects and planning and possibly buying land, which you can't get down the road of what land to buy too far down that road until you actually have money to negotiate and buy the land. We could be in a position, if only one is passed, to where we're at a dead end and we don't have the funds to finish. So then what do? Do we then do what some have told me happened in 1984, where you build something that's not suitable, that's doesn't have the bed space for the last 20 years because that's all the money we have? Or do we try to build something that is going to last long into the future, make sure the funds are in place from the beginning? And so that would be my concern. It also would be much easier for us if the state legislature allowed a larger percentage on the corrections tax, and we could just do this without the tax council, but they don't. And I've been promised a lot of things by legislators in the past. Not one of those things has ever gotten out of committee. I don't want to hedge our bets on something that may happen if we get lucky. I think it's up to us to decide. Either we acknowledge that we do need the jail, we fund it appropriately, and we build a jail that's going to serve the community well, or we say we're just not old enough, we don't have the courage to take on a project like this, and we leave that to whoever follows us in these seats. So that would be my thoughts.
Well, Mr. President, I have a different thought, because I'm back to Ken's article that he wrote in the paper about a sunset clause on a 0.30 tax that goes on forever. It's I was in the council, not as a councilman, but as somebody sitting in the audience for the last lit tax increase that we had, and I heard so many times it's just the cost of a record pop a day, and so essentially, but this is a forever tax, this 0.30. It's not a 22-year tax. It's forever, and we have to get it right. If it's 0.17 or if it's 0.16, we need to know that. If it's 0.30, what do we do with the excess money when the jail is paid for? What happens then when that lit tax is there? Have you ever heard of a tax going away? It doesn't go away. Because there's always people with their hands out for the money. And so we have to get it right, and we can wait to get it right. We can pass a 0.20 tax to get us started, and that tells the public that we are interested in a jail. But it doesn't mean that we're passing a tax that's 0.30 that's paid for the rest of infinity. We just can't do that. We got to get it right when we do it. We can't by guess and by gosh it at 0.30 and think that's enough. We need to hear from the study, hear from whether we're going to repurpose a building or whether we build a new building. We don't, we heard Jack just tell us that there might be an existing building in this community that we could repurpose. Then it would lower the cost. Then we may not need but 0.10 rather than 0.15 or 0.30. So I am in favor of passing the jail tax to 0.20, but addressing the lit tax at a later time.
Mr.
Councilman
President,
Gill,
if I can, representative from Baker Tilly, it was my understanding that we could adjust those bonds and bond rates if we, say, over-withheld or over-tack, or, say we did only need 0.2 or 0.25 in addition. We could accelerate those bonds and adjust that, correct, to what we're drawing in, minus the cost and things we paid ahead. And that's kind of like an accordion, because we're not going to know, Jerry, until...
Well, we would certainly know in 6 months a whole lot closer figure than we know right now.
But we may not get the other towns and municipalities on board like we are now.
Well, then we've got enough time
And we're not going to
to
convince the
draft another
legislature to do
resolution
anything.
at 0.15.
And we're not going to
Okay.
pass it at 0.1.
Sorry. Let's make our statements. We don't need to go back and forth with arguments, but Councilman Steele,
I was asking Baker Tilly to
Yeah, could we get,
explain,
we can answer
because when we spoke,
Yeah, I mean, if you end up having a rate that's higher than what you need, if we have a couple of things. One, you could not really accelerate the bond payment, but what you could do is you could accumulate that money and pay the bonds off early. You could refund those bonds. We could adjust. What we're talking about is setting kind of the higher numbers, and then we can, when we get the actual cost numbers, what we would actually structure it as.
What was your recommended rate from Baker Tilly's professional opinion? What was the recommended rate that this county lit tax be?
It's the 0.2 correctional piece, and then it's the 0.15 portion of it.
0.15, and then somehow it got changed to 0.30.
Well, I think Mr. Gale has talked about kind of why it's gotten changed. It's-
We're not understanding that.
okay, it's quite simple. I'll explain it again.
Yeah, take your time.
We have to get other councils to approve this for it to go into
You mean other
effect.
cities?
Other cities,
Okay.
other towns.
Okay.
And the reality is,
Okay.
there was not interest at 0.15. There is
Now,
interest.
how do we know there wasn't interest? Ben, they hadn't even voted yet.
Right, how did that happen?
Because
How did we know?
you begin to inform these members of the tax council.
We didn't know about it.
that-
We didn't know about it. We didn't know about it.
Well-
we didn't know about it. How did they find out?
That was work that I, as the council president, started to communicate to let
Not
them
to
know.
the council, but you go to them and not come to us?
That's not necessary. The point is, because the way I informed this council is when it was on the agenda the last 2 months,
Okay.
and we discussed it, and we all were told that this is something that has to go through the tax council. So then it's my duty to make sure that we are communicating to other members of the tax council to make sure whatever action this council may take on
Okay.
has some sense of potential for success.
Okay.
It doesn't take the entire council to, in a public meeting, this council doesn't act in private. The council acts in the public. There are certain things that, as the council president, such as working to prepare an agenda,
Listen.
that we have to do.
Can I make a statement? I've been on this council for 6 years. I've never seen what I've seen in 6 years. Never. We have a budget. We're going to be a part of that.
You were invited to be a part of it.
Thank you. We've invited with questions and concerns. We have we're not involved. I'm not involved. I don't know what's going on until I get here. That's not fair. You asking me to make a decision on what I hear, what this guy presents here. That's not fair to me. It's not fair. You guys gonna do this thing? You gotta be open, more transparent. I'm for public safety. Let's get this straight. First of all, I'm for public safety. Let's get that straight. So don't come in here with this. Well, we're not for, 'cause we are. But as others say, we are responsible for our constituents. I can pay it. I make $70-something thousand a year. I can pay it. but I guarantee there's a lot of them that can't pay it. And if I get in here in a budget and I ask people, what is our number one crime, and you say drugs, and then I ask the question, what are we doing about the drugs, and you say, well, we got 2 or 3 drunk officers, people, we got problems, we got problems within our budgets. We got problems that we need to straighten out before we do this thing. We got problems. Sheriff just talked about, we was in a meeting this morning. Wasn't that correct, Sheriff? We got problems within departments. We got morgues we need to buy. We got things we need to, everybody want raises. Everybody. And we got people that getting raises before they get the authority to do the raises. We got that going on. We got problems within this county that need to be cleaned up before we go just give people a bunch of money to do whatever they want to do. It's not fair to the little people. We passed a budget. This is disgraceful. We passed a budget. We're going to pass a budget, give a 3% raise, give other departments raises, and we're going to lay off a person at the end of the year. What kind of budget is that? So we got problems that we have to deal with. Sheriff, I love you to death. I've been over to that nasty jail. We need a jail. We really do. We really do. I feel for the people that works over there. I wouldn't want to work over there. We do. But we got to do it right. We got to do it right. We got to know what we're voting on. I don't know. So I'm sorry. Maybe I did it the wrong way, but I'm listening to Jerry. He brings some good points. We're listening to others. We're going to different meetings, talking to different departments. Mr. President, we got some problems. We really do.
Thank you, Councilman Reese.
like the-
A minute ago, I think there were 2 other members of the council, so I'm just going to start right to left. Councilwoman Likens, did you have a comment?
Yes, and I don't know if it's an appropriate time to mention this, but is it possible to amend the resolution to a lower amount? I understand that we want the .3, but for purposes of covering the bond, is it true that the .15 is sufficient?
We have it. It's 3.
Pardon?
I think we have to change that, right?
We would have to
Ted.
amend.
We have to amend.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can't speak to whether or not it's sufficient or not for bond coverage. It is germane, so you would be allowed to amend to a .15. That's not the question. We advertise a higher rate, you can always go lower. The issue is you have to, the clock starts running when the first individual in the tax council passes a resolution or an ordinance. Pendleton passed .3. That starts the clock running. We have until October 31st for over 50% of the tax council to pass the same ordinance/resolution. So if we lowered it to .15 tonight, that starts the clock over. At least 50% of the tax council would have to pass the .15 by October 31st for this to be able to take place in January.
Well, Ted, Pendleton has to revote. That's what we've been told. So can't they, if we amend the motion to say .15, that starts there's no other taxing agency that's even addressed it. Do we have
Actually,
time to give them notice?
Councilman Alexander, we've got that idea that Pendleton has to revote. Would you mind, we have some representatives from Pendleton Town Council. Do you have to revote? Okay. So Pendleton has voted. They passed it. They don't have to revote.
Good enough for me.
Are you done?
Yes.
I want to interrupt.
No, I appreciate it.
Okay. President,
Sorry, I told Councilman Vaughn I'd go in order. Let me go back to
You
him.
can go ahead and let Councilmember
Okay,
go.
Councilman Miller.
President Gelt, I just want to address the .15 versus the .3. The correctional tax of the .2 is to cover the bond. The .15 is like having mortgage insurance. We've got to have that. It's got to be a recurring revenue every year to sit over here to show that we can pay for that in case revenues go down. So we can't do anything in addition to building the jail. Fred, you and I are senior members of this council, and since we've been on this council, and I guess from what I've told years before that, we've been told that the criminal justice system is grossly underfunded. And we've been given great details about that. We've been given specifics about that. So the additional .5 to take it to the .3 was to do all of these things that we always wish we had the money to do, but we couldn't because we've been financially strapped. So that additional .15 is going to help with the drug problem, we hope. We're going to be able to put resources to that. We got other departments that want to hire additional police officers. They've come forward and said, hey, we would love to have this money to add an additional police officer. Or we would love to have it to be able to buy vehicles to do our job, so on and so forth. So that's where it goes. But the additional .15, again, we've been paying public safety operations out of our general fund rather than our public safety because there's not enough money there. It's been going on since I've been on this council. So all those areas are grossly underfunded. So that's where that additional .15 is going. It's going to go for the public defender's office. It's going to go to the sheriff's office. It's going to go to the courts. It's going to go to the prosecutors. To do all the things that we say that need to be done, that we all acknowledge that needs to be done. And we've told these folks that they've come to us year after year and stood at this podium and told us what they need to do. And we looked at them and said, you know what, if we had the money, we'd do it, but we just don't have it. I'm sorry. And we send them back out the door without it, and they can't do it. This is an opportunity for us to finally properly fund public safety. Everyone up here loves to beat on their chest and say, I'm pro-public safety. That's real easy to say. But it's really darn difficult to put your money where your mouth is and say, let's fund public safety. Let's make this community a safe place to live. I had a friend that just visited here from Greenwood last week that hadn't been up there over 20 years. He got here early, drove around. He said, what is going on in your county? I used to officiate sports up there 20 years ago. That place is terrible. It's dilapidated. He said, you had drug addicts walking out of their mind on Central Avenue.
Drug addict.
You got every other house that's boarded up and dilapidated falling in on top of itself. He goes, this is not the Anderson that I knew 20 years ago. This is not the Madison County I knew 20 years ago. Well, that's what happens when we don't go out here and do our job. We don't have the funding to properly do our job, to give these folks the help that they need. And again, I'm hoping that's part of that. I'm really counting on public safety departments to do the right thing. Let's get these folks the drug rehab they need. Let's get them to be back to being productive citizens of society. But to do this, it's going to take funding. We can't just keep saying, we wish we had it, but we don't, so come back and see us next year. Because that's what we keep telling them. Since I've been on this council, that's what we've been telling them. So again, I'm asking you, don't tell me you're public safety. Show me your public safety, your pro-public safety, and let's do the right thing. Let's fund public safety. We can go back and add a sunset clause at a later date. Is that correct, Ted? So after the first of the year, if we decide we want to go back and add a sunset clause, fantastic. Let's set it at 22 years and we'll discuss it and have that discussion and take care of it. Baker Tilly's told us we can pay the bond off early. We can also adjust the rate each year. We can go back and address that. Is that correct? Exactly. So if we see that we're taking too much money from the taxpayer, guess what? We can go back and adjust that at a later time.
Does that ever happen, Andrew?
No.
That's never happened.
It never happens.
I think on this council, you would have enough.
It's harder to do that than it is to reduce the tax. And no, that never happens.
I think on this council, you would have plenty of support to lowering the rate.
This
if
council,
needed.
but when this happens, it's not going to be this council. It's going to be some other council. And it's going to be hard for them to do it. So it's easy to say it. It's another thing to do it. And I would be in favor of .15 at this point. And when you're talking about dilapidated homes, we're going to have a whole lot more of those when we keep taxing the taxpayer. They're not going to have enough money to buy gasoline. Natural gas is going up 150% this year. How do we look in the taxpayer's eyes and say, boy, you know, we raised the tax whenever the cost of gasoline has doubled. The cost of natural gas has increased by 150%. Interest rates are going to go up. We are dealing with an inflationary period of time, and it is tough.
Let me tell you another story, Jerry, to go along with that. We can't get businesses to move to Madison County, into Anderson. My father-in-law, a relative of yours, his office, you know right where it's at. We had that office sold. The business that wanted to relocate to Madison County, walk in to our county, they want to come do one final walkthrough. There's a drug addict passed out in the park with needles floating in the fountain in front of it. They said, oh my gosh, you guys got a huge drug problem here. You know what, let us think about it. They walked out, guess what, Jerry? We didn't sell it. Because that's the problems we have here. And until we address those issues,
But I'm not convinced that this is going to address the issues, because, you know, people are dropping off drug addicts at the Christian Center every weekend, from Carmel and Noblesville and all over the state of Indiana. We are the hub where all this activity originates, because we have, I guess, a welcoming center for those individuals. So that's not going to change.
you're right, it's not going to change if we keep doing what we're doing. It's not going to change. We've got to take steps to make change.
The difference, just so we're all clear, from .15 to .3, if you make $30,000 a year, the difference would be $42,000 annually that person would pay.
$42.
Well, I'm sorry, $42. $42. Sorry, I'm looking at a spreadsheet here with lots of thousands. So if you earn $30,000 a year, it would cost you an additional $42 per year. If you go to the extreme end, $125,000 annual income, the addition of the extra .15 would cost you $176 a year. Income rates in between there adjust accordingly. So
That's with .15 or .3?
that would be the difference that you would pay. That would be the tax rate for .15. So if that is doubled to .3, you would just take that amount and.
Okay, well, what's the .50
So
total?
that would be, I can do the math real quick. On a $30,000 annual income, it would be $140. On a $125,000 annual income, it would be $586.
Okay, now we're, which is the very few single-family homes or single-income homes everybody has to have, two workers in the household, so it isn't uncommon. So we're talking about $400 to $500 per household, and that is significant.
Depending on the income rate.
Right.
If you had
The median home income, average income is not $125,000 a year.
right, if you take that $30,000 and say you have two people in the home, then that would be a combined annual income of $60,000. So that would fall in between on our chart here where we've got the 49,522 and the 80. It'd be somewhere in there. We could do the math on that quick, but it wouldn't be $500 or $600.
So it's a Rick or Papa day, right? Is this what they were saying before?
May I,
Councilman
is
Bond,
it okay? Can I speak?
go for
I'll
it.
try to wait last. I hope I'm not, I got a lot of things to say, so I hope I've got the floor, and I hope I'm not interrupted. People love to ask me questions, but I will say this. I spent a lot of time on this project. 3 months worth. Probably at least 30 hours a week to 40 hours a week. I got mixed feelings. Councilman Emery said, put your money where your mouth is. Well, you know what? You can back up my boats and pull my boats. Sheriff Rodney Cummings, Judge Hoppy, I supported everything out of that prosecutor's office, courts, and the jail this year. Pull my boats. This is tough for me. I've been following council meetings since I was 15 years old. I'm 45. It's easy to get up here with emotions. And I'm going to tell you right now, we got $12.5 million in the bank right now from the HARPA. We're getting another 12.5. And Councilman Gale made a statement. Now, me and the sheriff had a conversation about that this morning. We were probably, well, you left a little early, you got out of it. Said you had a meeting, but that's okay. I'm kidding. We had about a 2.5 hour meeting today, but you got to leave early. We talked, but I know you had to leave. You had another meeting to get to. The .15, and this is from some officials that's sitting here today, I'm not going to call out. .15 was initiated for the coverage of the bond. Point 3, yes, Councilman Gale is right, was attractive to the towns, but point 1.5 was to cover the bonds on the point 0.02. So, to get any money, they had to raise it to point 3. So, I called the last 2 weeks 2 state representatives and 1 state senator. And no, the state senator wasn't from this county. He was from up north. They've been in the state legislature for a while. And I asked, help me out on this vote. They said, tell me what you got. Originally, the state enacted the jail tax and set it at .02. Now, you can tack on a public safety. Now, how it was wrote, we all know the state legislators, sometimes it's hard to understand how they write codes and, so the original thought process was, we have a new jail built. And for visiting other counties, whether we close the work release, put the people at work release, have them work at the jail, was to put some money in the bank so we could back up opening costs of the jail. That's what the original plan was with the public safety. Talked to the sheriff about that this morning. Now, I don't think those state legislators are going to but this is hard for me because I have voted every single need. I got to look at it as a taxpayer. It's easy to, I look up to this man right here, Rodney Cummings, one of my closest friends. I ain't going to bad by it. I go around, I graduated 94 in high school, at Anderson High School. I go to 9th Street, my brother Fred right here. I walk 3rd Street. I go to Pearl Street. Anyone want to come 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night? It's going to take more than money, folks. Take love. It's going to take the Lord Almighty. I could give $5 million to the sheriff, to the prosecutor's office, and to the judges right now. And I know they're going to agree. Because I've had conversations. I spent time on this. But then I got people yelling at me when I go to work. At Speedway, and half of them, I thought, how do you even know about it? Because you haven't been to a meeting, and saying, you better not vote for it. I said, well, why? Give me a reason. If you go by my house, you probably see a police officer in my driveway all the time. Because I have a lot of law enforcement friends, troopers, jail. Now, I studied every single bit of this. Spent my own time, hours and hours. Talked to other council around the county, getting a weigh in. I didn't say don't vote for it. And I come in here and I hear, well, if you don't support this, you're not law enforcement. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm 45 years old and I pay attention. I work for city government. And I see a lot of things go wrong. We've had some projects go wrong. History repeats itself. Now, Councilman Reese was right. Now, Councilman Gallagher's a little bit virgin. We were invited. You had 3 people. Councilman Emery, Councilman Gale, and Councilman Steele. Did I say that right? Met with the auditor. 1 meeting. Now, our comments was you can email our comments and suggestions.
Councilman
Now,
Vaughn.
wait, I'm just being real.
I told you that.
Excuse me.
Point of order, I've got the floor.
Councilman
Point of
Vaughn.
order.
Councilman Vaughn, we are on an agenda item right now that is not the budget. You're bringing up the budget. We are talking about
I'm talking about the
ordinance.
whole tax. This still goes in the budget. What we spend still comes into the budget.
The meeting that you're
Okay,
referencing was a
okay,
budget
I'll
meeting.
withdraw what I
So
said,
if you could
okay.
get back to the tax.
Okay. So, tonight, you got a .15, a .3 in front of us. The jail study's not done. I do know you got to pass by October 31st. I've been told by Attorney Pelton's got a revote. I don't know if you got notice yet. I don't think two attorneys are gonna lie to me from this county that's involved in it. So whatever, I'm not gonna argue that. So you got to October 31st to do the .3. You have the end of December 31st. Mr. Nolting, would you back me up on this, please? Because you're the council attorney. To pass to .02. Is that correct? .2, sorry, .2. You have to the end of the year to enact the jail tax. Is that correct, sir?
I believe that's correct.
You believe that's correct? Thank you.
wanted to enact it for next year.
Do what?
If you want it for the coming year.
So when do we have to act it this year? October 31st on the .22?
Otherwise, it goes October 1st.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, thank you. So, I do know that built on our budget is 10%, we got a 19% raise for the Madison County road officers. The Anderson City patrol officers agreed on a 14% increase. Now, I've been asked by respectful people in this room to come up with a plan. What do we do? What plan do you have? What plan do we have to take the drug dealers off the street? Because I can go down the street on the east side of town and show you drug dealers. Where they at? We can modify. We can see it 3 days a week and show you the traffic. We don't, you know, when you make money and got a pretty good salary, you don't really look at if you're making 50 or 60. You don't really look at someone working at McDonald's barely making it. We think $100, $200, that's not a big deal. But I will say we got $25 million, 12.5 right now sitting in the bank. We got December 31st. What is that? Mr. Hanna, what is it? December 31st of 24 to use those funds. Thank you. Now, that's $25 million. What does this look like to the taxpayer? So what plan do we have? Are we going to take drug dealers off the street? Are we going to, you know, because the officers in both departments, the counties got raises, pretty good raises. 10% in our budget for the road officers. Now, the jail is not completed, the study. And I checked in 8 out of 9 other counties. Jail committees has been formed before the jail study done, so it can be open and transparent. And I know in past projects in this county that has been messed up. Maybe you guys don't know that. But I did my homework as a freshman counselor to look at everything in this budget. And I can't tell you. I look at other areas, but to raise the tax right now, we don't know what COVID's going to do. I don't see no plan. Now, I said at a 2.5 hour meeting with Sheriff Mellinger, Brent Jensen today, I found out this was supposed to go for the courts, prosecutor's office. What am I missing? Sheriff's Department. Now, I find out that dispatch needs money. So now we're split between 4 ways. So tell me a plan that this kind of money is really going to take the drug dealers off the street. Or some type of plan. Now, I hear talk about, well, the federal government's going to come in. I talked to 3 federal attorneys. And they said, you got a jail study going. They're backed up because they practice in Indianapolis and Southern District Court. And they said, they're not going to come in as long as you're doing something. That's the last thing they want to do. Now, I don't know what to do, folks. I had more people text me right here. Better not vote for it. Then I got law enforcement. So am I not a law enforcement officer because I don't support law enforcement? But I can tell you that the road officers got taken care of. Our county looks like they're going to do a 19% raise in 4 years. APD, I talked to they're going 14%. Now, it's easy to sit up here and make money, and we could pay it, but we don't think about Pearl Street. And that's our life here in Anderson. It's going to take more than this tax to turn this around. I've got state trooper friends. I monitor everything. I see the reality. I live 3 streets over from a drug house, and I'm sure my councilman buddy Reese here sees it too. Now, we got HARPA funds. What does it look like to the taxpayer? We got December 31st. We're backlogged on cases. Now I heard the courts don't need it. They took care of their problem in the courts.
Councilman Vaughn.
What? Wait a minute.
No,
So
I'm saying if you could try to wrap it up. You've been monopolizing the majority of the time. We want to be able to move on to other items in the agenda. If you could make your point, and then we'll move on.
So, we got a lot of motion here tonight. What's 130,000 people thinking? Everything hasn't been transparent. Everything goes hand to hand. So, we need to step back and really look at, tell me a plan that we have if I vote for this tax tonight. I understand that Councilman Reese just made a statement that some of this is going to be going to employees after we gave it 3% in the budget this year. We have no plan for this money. We're just saying we're going to do this. We got drug dealers on the street. I just watch our Congress, the 3-hour segment, and they spent millions of dollars everywhere in the United States to get rid of drugs, and nothing's happened. So what is the plan to using this money?
Councilman Vaughn, part of the answer to that is you referenced all this money going to all these places. We are the body that decides if there is money not needed for the jail, where that goes. We are probably not going to use our time, if we want to use our time wisely, developing a big detailed plan for money we don't even have. If this passes, that's when the council, working with other public safety offices in our county, would have the funds to put together a plan. I mean, these folks have been, for years, they've put together their plans, they've submitted the council plans, it's been delayed, nothing's happened. So we will be the ones that will determine where the money goes. It has not been determined. Secondly, the ARPA funds, because I did look into this, I've been looking for any option outside of a tax increase that is possible for this. Even if it would just mean we would only have to do the corrections and not the other. So of course, one of the first places I looked is that $25 million. It sure would be nice if we could use that. But from what I've learned, the federal government isn't allowing us to use $25 million of this handout to build a jail. So that's been looked into. And the question, what's it going to look like? Well, we explained that that money is there's a very strict section of things that you can use that money for, and building a jail is simply not it.
Okay.
So if we want to build a jail, then we're going to need to find ways that actually work to pay for a jail.
So I'm not done yet. I had the floor.
Councilman Vaughn, you've been going on for about 20 minutes.
But I have the floor, and we're going by
Councilman
Robert Rules of
Vaughn,
Order.
I'm going to recognize Councilman Emery
Point of
now.
order. You said we're going by Robert Rules of Order. I have the floor. I can speak as long as I want. According to Robert
no.
Rules of Order.
No.
Mr. Knowlton, thank you, sir. Obviously, you haven't read Robert Rules of Order.
Yes, I have.
Well,
And also...
I have the floor. I'm allowed to talk under...
Floor according to rules set by the chair. You have to keep.
There's no rules set by a chair until you want to interrupt me.
You speak to the motion at issue, resolution at issue, and if you come off of those talking points, the chair can call you back.
Okay, but
Which is-
he can't cut me off from speaking. I did. I'm speaking on the issue. Am I not? I pulled off when he asked me to. Now I'm still speaking on an issue, and I got interrupted, so I still have the floor.
the chair, under Robert's Rules of Order, can then recognize someone else, because you were all over the place. And it is not fair to the public, it's not fair to the rest of this council, for one member of the council to give a 30-minute sermon on a lot of different things and detract us from what we're actually here to do. So with that being said, Councilman Emery, you've been recognized.
Thank you, President Gale. Something that completely slipped my mind when we had discussions about the .15 to the .3. It took me a little while to go back and find it, but actually, that was requested back on August the 18th, 2021. Every council member received a copy of a letter signed by the following folks in Madison County, including not only council members, but all the taxing units received it, requesting that it be moved from .15 to .3 to address the shortfalls in the criminal justice system. And that was signed by Rodney Cummings, prosecutor, Scott Mellinger, sheriff, Brian Williams, chief public defender, David Hoppy, judge, Mark Dudley, judge, Angela Warner Sims, judge, Andrew Hopper, judge, Stephen Coaster, judge, and Scott Norwick, judge. So again, that completely slipped my mind until after the fact, and I went back and researched that. So I just wanted to share that,
Right.
That those folks did ask for that increase.
And it was also in the amended ordinance that we did discuss at our last meeting.
Is there any towns that signed on that, Councilman?
I'm sorry?
Is there any city or towns signed on that?
No, that was from the county, because that's who we're voting.
So
We're
we
voting for the
can't
counties.
use HARPA funds, Councilman Gale. I watched an AIC video from the attorney, asked him when we was at conference down there, we can use it for prosecutor needs, criminal justice needs, courts. I watch it. Are they wrong?
No, the question that I believe you were asking was raising a tax to build a jail when we have $25 million.
No, I meant the point.
And so what
Say-
I explained is that you cannot use that money to build a jail. Yes, you could use that money in certain situations for some of those other entities.
Call for the question.
Doesn't call for long-term funding.
Okay, the question has been called. I assume this is going to want to be a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Todd, would you call the vote on this?
I want to clarify which one we're voting for.
Okay, thank you. So clarifying, this is ordinance number 2021-8A, which is the 0.3% increase in the public safety tax.
Councilman Bond.
Again, I'm going to swing my boat really quickly.
Under Robert's Rules of Order, you
Yes or
vote.
no?
You don't explain your vote. You had time for that already.
No. You want to play that one?
Councilman Reese.
No.
Councilman Alexander.
No.
Councilman Emery.
Yes.
Councilwoman Likens.
No.
Councilman Steele.
Yes.
President Gale.
Yes. 4-3, that motion fails. Next on the agenda is the ordinance 2021-8C, the corrections facility lit. This would be